Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's WNBA betting podcast. I'm your host, Maria Marino, joined for the last time this season by Dano Mattia. This is our recap episode of a wild WNBA finals and a wild 2024 season in the W. It's a beautiful day in New York City. Dano,
Stunning.
you're here.
Stunning.
You're here. There is a lot to unpack with what was just a crazy winner-take-all Game 5, and we'll get into it a little bit. But the New York Liberty are champions. Reaction.
I see a lot of stuff online about how it was stolen. I was in the post-game press conference listening to Cheryl say that. And you know what? I love credit due to Sandy for complaining about the calls in Game 4. It worked. They attacked. They got hit in the mouth to start. And I'm not going to lie, I had my doubts. Could have been a disaster for Stewie if she had missed another 2 free throws or either of those last 2. So, and it feels weird because, Sabrina hits maybe the biggest shot in Liberty history in Game 3, and then talk about, one of the worst all-time performances in Game 5. But, I don't have the box score in front of me anymore. Actually, I do. I grabbed a couple hard copies.
Oh, I love a hard copy box score, as people know who listen to the pod. I have the digital one in front of me, too.
Yeah. She did put up 7 rebounds and 8 assists. Great.
Was it 7 rebounds for Sabrina or
7?
Oh, wow. I think I may have slighted her on another show that I did. Yeah, 8 assists, the game high as well.
And
Sabrina.
But 1 for 19 is hard to forget. And there were some awful misses. She had a few threes in the end that looked so good. She did hit the first one, and the crowd pop was insane. The crowd in Barclays is just unmatched. I couldn't even hear whistles down the stretch. But I talked to some people who literally said they wanted to vote Nafisa Collier for MVP, even though they lost. Credit to her. I lost my voice a little bit. It was a great night. Banners fly forever, and no asterisk for me. It was a tight series, and if you look at the overtime period, no made shots, just free throws for Kayla McBride for the Lynx, and I think 4 turnovers and some Courtney Williams missed shots, a Bridget missed shot. Just no execution on their part. And of course, Fee fouls out with less than a minute to go. And awesome moment. So happy I was in the building for it. And, just the ugliest game. Just glad that the New York Liberty came through.
I have a lot of mixed feelings this morning because there's the bigger picture aspect of the W. There's the game itself. This was obviously the most memorable season ever in the history of the league. I think it was really fitting that we got a decisive Game 5 with a very competitive series. I'll be honest, I wish the game was a little better. It's cool and all that it went to overtime again, but we talked about just how ugly a game it was. I feel like the shooting was horrible all the way around. So Minnesota, 37% from the floor, 16% from 3. New York was even worse, just over 30% from the floor, 8.7% from 3. Look, obviously the final score is 67-62 with an overtime frame. The total in this game was set at 157.5, which was a few points. You're getting a few points lower than we were pretty much getting every game of the series. Well, that went way the hell under. Look, defense is great. You know, you can admire defense and you can admire that both of these teams played really hard. I just wish it was a little of I wish it was a prettier game, right? So that's one aspect to it. In regard to the officiating, this started becoming a storyline after Game 3, right? So Game 3 was, if there was any game in this series New York deserved to win. I mean, I know Game 2 was the only New York cover of the series, but Game 3, I really felt that with the way that New York played, you know, Stewie going off for 30 and 11 boards, Sabrina with 2 dagger threes late, they absolutely deserved to win that game. However, you know, you felt about it. Cheryl took issue with the officiating and called it out, right? And the following game, I think the tables turned and the free throw attempts were double for Minnesota that they were for New York, which forced the Game 5. And then here in Game 5, even a bigger free throw disparity in favor of New York, admittedly. But while I agree that Cheryl has a point in terms of that foul call at the end of regulation, which allowed Stewie to make the free throws, like, I think you can argue it for sure. To me, in the moment, I didn't think it was going to be a foul, but I always say the aggressor is more often than not going to get a call. And the league reviewed it, right? The challenge was utilized. There was a review. It was not overturned. You know, I think if it were a situation where we didn't get officials didn't get a chance to overturn it or, you know, review it, then you have a real gripe. I think it certainly makes sense to explore potentially a third party in the future. That's fine. But to me, the term stolen is strong when you still have an overtime period and you have the performance that you had. Now, don't get me wrong. I know how hard it is to flip momentum. I mean, there's a reason that New York struggled in Game 1 when they went to overtime, when they were the team with the momentum. So there's all of that. And that's another reason I think I'm disappointed in the game as a whole, because it's such a talking point instead of just like how great, you know, the series was, how great the season has been. I just personally felt the game itself, I think that was the worst game of the series, like in terms of just being an enjoyable experience. And I didn't feel like it was truly representative of just how awesome like these games have been throughout the postseason. So that's how I feel about that. Sabrina, it's truly inexplicable. And also, you know, Stewie didn't shoot great from the floor either, but I mean, she still ended up with double figures. She was 4-15 from the floor. But the worst field goal percentage in a playoff game ever, with a minimum of 15 attempts, was Sabrina. And we've been talking about how, look, Vegas did it to her in Game 3 of that series. And there were times where Minnesota during this series absolutely stifled Sabrina. I think that's the next step in her evolution. Personally, I've done a lot of praising of her development over the last few years, right? You know, she became a really great 3-point shooting threat last season. This season, she became much better driving to the basket and in the mid-range. And there were absolutely times this season where she carried the Liberty. There was a 5-game stretch where she had 20 in every game, culminating with a 30-piece right before the Olympic break when Stewie was out. There were games this postseason where Sabrina won you the game. You know, that second game against Atlanta, or there was a game against Vegas. She played amazing. Her performance does not negate any of the great performances
100%.
that she had prior. And she still did hit the biggest shot in Liberty history, and it still did culminate with a championship. So I don't want to take any of that away from her, although it was a disappointing individual performance from the floor in Game 5. Like you talked about, obviously recognized that she needed to get her teammates going. And so that's that. Stewie, I have to say, I was shocked. I'm happy that she had a chance to redeem herself.
Yes.
After missing the 2 prior free throws.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you would have asked my preference, I wish it didn't come down to that and that call and all that stuff. Bigger picture, the Liberty are kind of a microcosm of the WNBA in that, they were down and out for a bit. They were playing games a few years ago at Westchester County Center with like 2,000 people in the crowd, not a professional facility. But if that didn't happen, right, they wouldn't have been sold to an ownership group led by Joe and Clara Wu Tsai that were willing to invest in them and treat them like the professionals and the elite athletes that they are. They also wouldn't have landed the number 1 pick in the 2020 draft. And that set everything in motion for where this Liberty franchise is. And, you don't have, without those 2 things, in my opinion, without the foundation that was built by like Sabrina, and then the following year, Benajelani Hamilton coming there, and then coupled with the ownership, you do not get somebody like Jonquel Jones requesting a trade. You do not get Breanna Stewart and Courtney Vandersloot wanting to come there. And by the way, I have to praise Jonathan Kolb, the GM. I think if you look up and down this team, drafted Niara Sabally.
I was critical of it too. She was hurt, had just had a surgery, and golly.
Yeah. Drafted her 5th overall in 2022. Didn't play at all that season because of injury. The move to get Leonie Fibish, which we've been praising all season, which, by the way, happened last season, but we didn't see the fruits of it till this season because she didn't play, but got her rights last season. How about the fact that they even got Kayla Thornton in the Jonquel trade? People forget that. And without those 3 pieces, Liberty are not winning that Game 5. No. So you need depth. Anyway, Dano, I've been on my soapbox for a while.
I mean, there's a lot of things that went into it. You're so right. I tweeted the Sabally game. I texted Sabrina Merchant during the game. Like, she came in and added value really quickly. But, I never would have predicted seeing us in a Game 5 of an overtime and Niara Sabally out there to start. Just phenomenal game. Gave him great minutes all series. Didn't touch the floor against Vegas. Sandy went to lineups that we have not seen all season. Credit to her. But yeah, credit to the Liberty organization, like you're saying. With the Miles Ehrlich, awesome beat writer for Winsider, wrote a great piece about the Liberty investing time and talking to Fibish. She'd been with the Sparks and with the Sky, and no one even checked in on her. And then it becomes a possibility, and they want her to come play. It's just it's beautiful, and I love that she hit the 3 to start overtime. She was fearless. If there's any player that I trusted to bring it this entire playoff run, it was Fibish.
Oh my goodness, tell me about it. In Game 5, I'm like, just pass the ball to Leo, dude. She's the only one I trust right now. But yeah, Team Germany showing out for the New York Liberty to help them bring home their first championship. It's well documented. They were the only original franchise without one. They were previously 0-5 in finals appearances. And, New York hadn't had a basketball championship, the city, in over 50 years. And by the way, how emblematic of the city, right? Ain't gotta be pretty, just gotta be gritty, right?
Yes.
I think that's how I would describe this. Let's flip and talk about Minnesota for a minute here, Dano.
Yeah.
You talked about Nafisa Collier. I got to tell you, it crossed my mind. Hold on. I got to say one more thing about New York. Jonquel Jones deserved finals MVP. She was the most consistent, solid star player throughout. But it definitely did cross my mind for a quick second. Like, who was MVP? And like,
Yeah, it made you think a little bit.
Nafisa was the best overall player, I think, throughout
Sure.
the series and the best player on the floor in Game 5.
Sure.
So shout out to Nafisa Collier, man. I mean, this showed just how great she is. She just is everywhere. She never gives up on a play. So impressive. There is nothing she can't do on the court, in my opinion. Like, she can do everything offensively. She can do everything defensively. And she's going to play every minute of the game. She's the best conditioned, athlete out there. She was phenomenal. So I felt bad for her.
Yeah.
I think Kayla McBride and Courtney Williams especially had moments of absolute brilliance in these finals. Kayla McBride, first of all, she's largely responsible for Sabrina's ineptitude shooting wise. I mean, she was the primary defender, and actually Courtney Williams and Bridget Carlton spent a little time defending Sabrina too. I think all the perimeter defenders did a great job. But Kayla McBride had big scoring games. Courtney Williams, obviously, like, the Lynx aren't where they are without her making those game-winning plays at the end of game 1. So they were phenomenal. I think speaking of front offices, Minnesota's front office is superb as well. They were so underrated in the offseason, getting Courtney Williams, getting Alana Smith. This is a team that won 11 more games than they did a season ago. They were a 6 seed a season ago, then went to a 2 seed this year. They were great. They were absolutely great. I think, like I said, going in, I think it's the best matchup we could have gotten. And I understand. I understand a little bit of bitterness. I saw Nafisa's Instagram post. I don't know if you saw it yet, Dano.
Oh, I have not seen it. My phone is just completely out of it.
It's photo slide, it's like a slide of all the photos, and the very last photo essentially is like Alana Smith guarding Stewie, with like it's like a still shot, and it's like, yep. I mean, look, as I explained before, I totally get it, but and I'll say this too. I think the Kathy Engelbert wearing a dress that looked to have some sort of like New York skyline on it, I think the reaction to that is a little bit overblown.
I just thought it was an ugly dress, to be honest, but
well, people are saying like, oh, they clearly wanted New York to win, and that's fine. I think you can certainly believe that. I think you could easily just also say the game is in New York regardless of who's winning. If they're like, I don't know, it just seemed to be part of the atmosphere. But again, I feel for you. I feel for you if you're a Lynx fan. I feel for you if you're a Lynx better. And let's just say this, like, we had some people on the pod, like, I remember Albert Wynn was like, I think the Lynx are going to win on the pod. Michael Fiddle had a Lynx future. I think a few people have definitely talked about the Lynx.
30-1.
There you go. You had a Lynx future. Obviously, some people had Liberty stuff, invested. But I would say, though, both of you were right. Like, if you had the Lynx going into this series and you had the Liberty going into the series, guess what? Like, just because you lose a bet doesn't necessarily mean you were wrong. Like, I know it sucks, but this was clearly a series that could have.
I mean, this series could have ended 3-0. New York doesn't collapse in game 1. Like, I mean, I think they were the best team all year. Jonquel was horrible against the Lynx during the regular season. Had one good game. I think they probably took a lot of like what Dallas does with Tierra McCowan against the Lynx and the success they had. They probably could have gone at Jonquel even more. I think you usually play about 8 deep when you get to the playoffs. especially deeper in the playoffs. And the Liberty bench pieces just all fit. I mean, Sloot didn't get much run, but she was instrumental. I mean, you got we got a stinker from Sabrina. They got a stinker from Courtney Williams, who was elite in game one. 2 for 14, 4 points, 5 turnovers. That's just not going to cut it.
Right.
A -10. I think they got some good pieces though. I mean, it's going to be interesting with expansion to see who they keep. Because I think Diamond Miller looked really great last year, and obviously she was injured, but she's coming back. Dorka, playing finals minutes. I mean, we played Maisha Hines-Allen off the court, who was a huge piece to their system the second half of the season. To the fact that they had to play Dorka. So, I mean, it's a great experience for a lot of young players. I mean, I forget that, Fibic is still young. I mean, the future's bright for both sides.
Right.
And I mean, I can't speak enough about Savali. I mean, just an absolute gem of a human. To your original point, it sucks if you're on the Lynx side. I mean, I've been preaching it all season. I said it was our year, so I'm not holding anything back. Banners fly forever. And thank God Sabrina made a huge shot and they won this series, or she would be ridiculed to the end of the earth. But the vibes are phenomenal. I mean, it's like the most perfect weather outside. And I'm glad I was there for it. I'm very thankful. The team did it. And I mean, I heard people saying, Sandy's coaching for her job. She made adjustments. Everything was, I mean, if you had just only tuned in to game 5, you're probably like, what is this product?
Yeah.
But the whole series just extremely, extremely competitive. Multiple, I think 3 of the wins in the series, the team was down by at least 12. So it was nuts. I mean, it was very quiet. I mean, the fact that you come into a game 5 at home and you score 10 points in the first quarter, not pretty. But then you held the Lynx to 10 in the third. I mean, to have the lead going into the fourth was, borderline miracle. And I mean, the fact that the under cashed by a wide margin with an overtime game is hilarious.
And by the way, something we've talked about in our action Slack, like literally every time Minnesota and New York have played together, played against each other so far, going into game 5, the first quarter over cash around like 40 points or so.
Yeah, I think we gave it out a couple games ago.
Yeah, you're right. You did. And that clearly that trend clearly got bucked. I'll say this too, like in defense of, I've already been, I think, fairly critical about just that the game was not as pretty as I would prefer.
Yeah.
But I think we also have to understand too that I think in general, in any sport, if you have a winner take all game, you probably want to bet the under, right? That's kind of like a cliche that you hear. A lot of times teams are tight. You buckle down on defense. It's a lot of pressure. So like, I'm not necessarily shocked to see like a poor shooting game. I was maybe to this extent, but like, it's so funny. I was thinking back to like, what was the Super Bowl in like 2019 with the Patriots, and was it the 49ers, and the final score was like 9-6 or whatever. Like it happens. Okay. It happens, people. So it's not just the WNBA that has like ugly championship games from time to time. But again, ultimately, hopefully you were tuning in throughout and, throughout the season just to see like what great games we had and great performances across the board. So couple of quick shout outs. So first of all, I think you had overall a nice winning postseason, and certainly with some of the futures that cashed in the last 24 hours. You're doing fine.
That's good.
Quickly here in the last episode that we were able to do, before the finals. So the finals preview, we had Jim Turvey and Joe Dellera, and Turvey was like, hey, I have a long shot I really like for MVP, John Cole Jones plus 3,400, and ding 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 ding
Would
ding,
love to see it.
King James
Yeah, I mean,
cashing again.
I saw him before the game. I was on the court. He came down, and that was some inspiring
Oh,
shit to my heart. I was like, yes, I needed you in this building.
oh, that's
I love that
heartwarming.
man. Love that man.
We love Turvey. Couple of other ones that off the top of my head, like right after game one, I did a pod with Brian Fonseca, and he was like Liberty 3-2. I forget what the
Love that.
odds were at the time. That cashed. I immediately bet the series to go 5 games plus 120. And then there was obviously a lot of prop angles and things along the way. I think this was a big year for Buckets WNBA. This is our first year on our very own feed. Last season was our debut season, but we were still on the same feed as our NBA Buckets, which has been great. And that whole crew has been super supportive. And a lot of those handicappers have come on this season, which is awesome. So in addition to you, Dano, and Jim, who were staples a season ago, Jay Money was also on last season. He was back this season. Matt Moore filled in on our playoff preview again, which was awesome. But then we got Brian Fonseca, I mentioned, back too. But we got some new voices too that I just want to shout out. Joe Dellera, this was his first season betting WNBA. What a rookie campaign for Dellera on the W, with the volume that he bets and all his contributions. Michael Fiddle came on. He was great. Andrew O'Connor Watts, the king of the first half bet, particularly with Washington, or as I like to call Watsington. Albert Wynn, I already mentioned, and Danielle Alvari filled in for us at one point. So we just had an incredible crew. I think we did 34 episodes last season, and we got 52 this season. So
love that.
Pretty sweet. Couple of, I'm just taking us back to our preview pods, Dano. A couple of wins that we had. We told you bright and early, Lynx over win total, Lynx to make the playoffs. You and Jim both loved Aces under their win total. Bang, bang, bang. We had some, I think, disappointed Aces fans, but we kept saying it doesn't mean they're a bad team. They could still be good and go under their win total of like 32.5 or whatever it was. Storm over their win total, Sparks under. One of my famous preseason bets was Dream to miss the playoffs, and they found a way to get in. They snuck in, but I still think it was a good bet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to have to do it again. They're getting a new coach. It's my I guess yearly donation to the gambling gods.
Bunch of teams getting new coaches.
Yes.
We need a new coach in LA, need a new coach in Dallas, need a new coach in Atlanta and Chicago. What? Where are all these coaches
and apparently potentially Connecticut. So, I mean, we don't know what's happening with Stephanie White.
Yeah, I heard she has another year left on her deal, but a lot of those players are free agents coming up. And from what I understand, Connecticut, it's a shame because it's a dope like atmosphere and everything, but the owners, I don't know how seriously they take it. And I'm hearing Alyssa Thomas complaining that they have practice during the playoffs and then there's like a birthday party like on the same court. So hopefully that gets figured out. And you mentioned the expansion draft. I expect us to do some coverage in December because we have Golden State coming into the league next year. And we're going to have more games next year, 44 in the regular season. We're actually going to have a 7-game finals next year. It's going to be wild. So I just want to thank everybody for listening and coming along for the ride. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned things, every week, every episode. made a little bit of money, had some fun. You know, this whole WNBA thing, it's just getting started. Like, this is just the, you know, just the beginning. As I've said prior, this wouldn't be possible. Doing this pod would not be possible without David Payne, who's our trusty producer, editor, does most of our, you know, gets all our episodes out there. Matt Mitchell, who's been in our corner since day one, and Katie Rich Creek and Colin Whitchurch, and also all of our video people. Yeah. I can't possibly rattle off all your names, but putting our pods up on YouTube every week. Thank you. This is like my, like, if I were accepting like an award, this is basically my speech. So, any closing thoughts from you, Dano?
Amazing season. Very happy with all the money that was made, with all the connections that were made. Credit to you. I mean, as always, you've been, you know, deep in women's basketball knowledge, you know, all levels. And I mean, like, those who know me know women's college basketball betting has been my favorite thing in the world, which is coming up. But just from a coverage standpoint, you've always been there. And the fact that, you know, I mean, I was at the game last night walking around pacing because that's what I do when I'm nervous. And, you know, people coming up to me saying, you know, big fan, I'm on, you know, listening to you on Buckets with Maria. It's like, you know, that's awesome. It's really cool. I mean, the fact that, you know, there's a minimum of 18,000 people in these stadiums is just super cool to see. And I'm glad that we hopefully brought some new fans to the league. And, I mean, if you think Caitlin Clark is a huge star, which she is, I mean, we got a lot more coming. So I think it's like we've been waiting to see the pickup in growth, and it's here. Probably means lines are going to get sharper, which is completely fine. We'll find a way to win. And but yeah, credit to you. Hats off to you for sure. Pat yourself on the back. Next time I see you, buying you all the drinks. Yes.
Well, thank you. Hold on. Now I have to just quickly look up, in case you're wondering, favorites for MVP next year. At the top, it's Asia Wilson. Right under her, Caitlin Clark, baby. Yeah, and then Nafisa Collier, Stewie.
What are Fee's odds now?
What?
What are her odds right now?
Caitlin?
No, Nafisa's
plus 550. That sounds like a good bet, man. Oh, you know what I was going to say?
It does, but I wish there was a better number. Golly. If Asia was a minus 3,000 at one point, which I bet her not to win like an idiot. But I still think Fee is a great bet for next year, and odds probably won't get better than that. So if you want a good horse, I'll probably bet it here shortly. I'm just sad that the number's not better.
I'll say that I'll just end with this. Well, first of all, going into this season, we were like, how the hell is Caitlin like in that upper echelon of like MVP favorites? Well, guess what? She finished 4th in the voting. So
first team all WNBA.
Can't really.
She's incredible.
Can't really say that her being second favorite is like completely out of the question. But my closing word is, you know, at the end of last season, the Liberty were heartbroken and they lamented that for a year, and this was their redemption postseason, and they ended up with a championship. Well, now it's going to be Minnesota who's going to be hungry and angry, and they feel like they got robbed. And I already talked about the improvement last season to this season, and let me just say, I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota's back playing for a chip again next season. So.
Great. I would love to do it all again. Bring it to
All right. But for now, we're going to take a breather. Freaking NBA is already starting in like 24 hours. So I'm going to start doing NBA stuff. So take a look for that. Also, if you didn't know, Action Network does have a special channel called BBOC, which is our college sports, where we're increasing our women's college basketball, especially all of that content. So Dano, I'm sure you will not be a stranger. We'll be talking to you soon. Thanks everybody once again, and let's get buckets.